Whether you're a novice home cook or a seasoned chef, you're probably aware that having a well-stocked spice cabinet is one of the keys to enhancing the flavor of your dishes. Spices can do more than just season your food, they can also help prevent spoilage and add a splash of color and health-promoting plant compounds to your dishes. Many common spices and herbs, such as cloves, turmeric, rosemary, sage, and cinnamon, have been shown to have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Furthermore, preliminary evidence suggests that eating foods with spices and herbs on a regular basis may reduce your risk of complications associated with heart and respiratory diseases. If you've been collecting herbs and spices for a while, you might be wondering when they should be replaced and if they expire. This video discusses the shelf life of common dried herbs and spices. How do you know if spices are still good, and storing spices for maximum shelf life? Shelf life of common herbs and spices. Spices are defined by the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, as aromatic vegetable substances in whole, broken, or ground form, whose significant function in food is seasoning, rather than nutrition. Spices are seasonings made from a plant's dried roots, bark, or stem, whereas herbs are made from the plant's dried or fresh leaves. Variables to consider when determining the shelf life of dried herbs and spices include their type, processing, and storage. Dried spices, for example, have a longer shelf life than dried herbs, and the more whole, or less processed, a seasoning is, the longer its shelf life. Dried herbs typically have a shelf life of 1 to 3 years. Here are some examples: basil, oregano, thyme, rosemary, bay leaves, dill, parsley, cilantro, mint, marjoram, sage. Spices, whether ground or powdered, typically have a shelf life of 2 to 3 years. Typical examples include powdered ginger, garlic powder, ground cinnamon, chili powder, ground turmeric, ground allspice, ground cardamom, ground paprika, crushed red pepper flakes. Seasoning blends. Whole or unground spices have the longest shelf life because less of their surface area is exposed to air, light, and moisture. This allows them to retain their aromatic oils and flavor compounds for a longer period of time than their ground counterparts. Whole spices can be stored properly for up to 4 years. Examples include whole peppercorns, coriander, mustard seeds, fennel seeds, caraway seeds, cumin seeds, whole nutmeg, cloves, cinnamon sticks, whole dried chili peppers, lemongrass. The exception to this rule is salt, which can be used indefinitely, regardless of size or shape, without spoiling or losing flavor. However, if you use seasoned salt, any additional seasonings may lose their potency over time. How do you know if spices are still good? You can check the freshness of your seasonings with a few simple tests. Color test. Spices can vary in color between batches, but your spices may fade in color over time. If the colors are much duller than when you purchased it, this can be a good indication that the flavor has faded as well. Sniff test. The strength of a spice's fragrance typically directly correlates to its potency. Rub a bit of seasoning in your hand to activate the essential oils. If the aroma is weak, this can mean that their essential oils have evaporated, impacting their flavor. Taste test. Taste a small amount of seasoning in question before adding it to your dish to avoid serving a bland meal. Storing spices for maximum shelf life. Storing your spices properly can help ensure a more potent flavor throughout their lifespan. Here are some tips to guide you in the best way to store spices. Store spices in airtight containers. Label the spice container with the date that you purchased it by using tape or labeling stickers. Fully seal your spice canisters after each use. Store your spices in a dark and dry environment. Seasoning should be stored in an area with cool and consistent temperature. Red pepper spices like chili powder, paprika, and red pepper flakes can be stored in the refrigerator do not store in the freezer. All other spices should be stored in a pantry. Fresh herbs can be washed, chopped, and placed in an ice cube tray with water or broth to be frozen and used at a later date. Since air, heat, and moisture all impact spice longevity, seasonings should be stored away from the oven. Avoid keeping your seasonings on the ledge above the stove. Thanks for watching, and have a happy and healthy day. Don't forget to like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to get updates on new videos.